It is Friday, and we are so happy to be back with another episode. Today, we are talking to Jess Spinner about our food relationships. How can we identify sustainable, balanced, and supportive food relationships with performance athletes? We want to know what you think. Please drop your questions in the comments. We would love to hear from you. We would love to know what your thoughts are. This is Beyond the Steps. If you haven't been with us before, where we chat with a guest expert to break down one question from a wide variety of issues affecting performance athletes, from racism, gender equity, sex abuse prevention, nutrition, psychology, and science, and everything in between. I'm Melissa McDaniel Grisham with Turning Point Dance Creations, and I'm here with my amazing co-host, Bree Zabrowski, co-founder and CEO of Apollo Performance Wear. Today, we are chatting with Jess Spinner about identifying the sustainable balance and supportive food relationship tools for performance athletes. So, without further ado, I want Bree to tell us about Jess.
Yeah, we're excited to have Jess with us. She's a professional dancer turned health coach that helps dancers find a balanced approach to food and the body, creating confidence in food choices, body image, and their dancing. Jess, welcome back. And it's so nice to see you again. We always love chatting with you.
Me
How are you?
too. Thank you. I'm great. Thank you guys for having me again.
Yeah, it's awesome to have you back. We're excited to dive in. So tell us a little bit as a health coach, how are you best helping performance athletes? What is the process? And when somebody comes to you, what does that process look like?
Yeah, so, over the course of the time I've been working with dancers, I started working with dancers actually back in 2015. I really feel like I've honed in on as far as like the timeline and the steps and shifts that really benefit them to feel like they're just in an easy and low stress situation with food in
Yeah.
their bodies. So I always say, like, it seems like a long time, but my starting point with dancers is a 6 month commitment where we meet every
Okay.
single week for 30 minutes a week, so that we're really talking about the day to day things that are having this massive impact on food and body image. And, I also always like to say, like, you can do this work on your own, like, you can seek out resources and start to make adjustments, but it takes a lot
Yeah.
of self motivation.
Mm.
So I do think that, like, a big part of my role is to provide, the support and accountability and next steps for them to be successful.
Do you ever have people come to you? Because I feel like that motivation is really hard for some people and that consistency. Like, is your job to kind of bolster that until they can have that on their own, or do you only work with people who have that motivation?
Well,
Just curious.
dancers, like, tend to be disciplined.
Yeah.
So I say that, it's like they're so disciplined in their routines, and sometimes in their approach, that can sometimes actually be a detriment
Mm.
to their balance in terms of food and body image goes. And so it's like I need from them just the discipline to show up and meet with me every week, And so, like, they have that, and then it's a matter of, in a lot of ways, getting them to just go easier on themselves in
Mm.
these areas.
Nice.
That's so interesting because normally people, like when you talk about trainers and things
Yeah.
like that, you meet to get people to go harder. And with dancers, you're actually getting to meet with you to
Makes
kind of
sense.
back off.
Completely, completely.
That's so
Yeah.
interesting. So, what is one of the biggest challenges that you're seeing today with young performance athletes in their relationship to food?
You know, Food tends to become the enemy at some
Mm.
point. And it's
Yeah.
like, oh, like, I shouldn't be eating so much of it, or I shouldn't be eating these specific foods. And they lose the connection to what a wonderful asset and tool and an essential piece of their performance puzzle that it is. And they become, afraid of it, or they become restrictive, or, a lot
Mhm.
of dancers, and this was my experience, try to be restrictive, but then are so active that they end up then at some point overeating. And that's what I fell into, was like, I'd be like good and eat very little over the course of my dancing day. And then I would get home and it would be like, oh my God, I can't stop,
Mhm.
And I see a lot of dancers who get into that kind of thing where it's just like becomes very back and forth, and they feel like they're in extremes and they can't get out of it.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, and then there's a guilt with that. I know that as a teacher, we spend late nights at the studio, and I will say, okay, I start at 4 o'clock. I don't end till 10, and
Yeah.
I'm like,
Right.
I'm gonna eat a salad and a piece of fruit. I'm gonna take fruit and raw veggies, and and by the time I get home at 10:30, almost
Starving.
11, I'm like, oh, give me whatever you can give me out of this
Yeah.
refrigerator so that I can eat it. And then you're like, oh, I failed.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh my gosh. And you do it again the next night, you do it again the next night. So
Yeah.
that's definitely something that resonates with me. So we talked a little bit about, food becoming the enemy and kind of losing the perspective of what the benefits of food are, or how it's a tool and how it helps you. So what should be the goal when performance athletes think about food?
Well, I think overall, my hope is that they can get to a place where it's not a stressful thing. It
Mm,
feels like easy, like making food choices is easy. And even the planning and preparation, because that tends to be a missing piece
yeah.
as well. It's like the schedules are so packed that either if they're younger, like the parents don't have time to help get the meals together, so it ends up being on the go all the time, or like the kids play very little role in the actual food planning and prep. So then, like, maybe they don't even have things that they want to eat with them. And so, I want it to be easy and stress free. You want it to have variety and you want to fuel sufficiently.
Mm, okay.
Okay. So this is a great segue, right? So there's a sea of information out there, and everything points to a different way of thinking about food. And I mean, I know for me, completely overwhelmed in all directions with contradictory information. So you've got, plant-based eating and documentaries for performance athletes like Game Changers about how great plant-based eating is. And then the next one says plant-based eating doesn't give you enough. And you need a full plate of colors, and you need meat and dairy and grains, and then theories on keto and protein shakes, and on and on and on. And it can be frustrating to know what is the right thing to believe, and where do I start, and how do you sort through this to get to your truth. And it creates confusion and can lead to unhealthier habits and routines. What is your advice for somebody who is completely overstimulated with all of this information on the topic? Like, how do you get to what
Yeah.
is right for you?
I think that it does start with blocking out some of the excess noise wherever you can. So that might look like unfollowing certain accounts that you follow on social media. It
Mhm.
might be actually just like seeing those messages and working to get to a point where you're ignoring them and they just kind of move past you. Like I said, it's constant noise. I mean, even, the TV that you watch a lot of times on morning
Commercials, yeah.
TV shows, they'll talk about, oh, sometimes it's the latest nutrition study, but it's like so
Yeah.
specific and isolated
Mhm.
about like one thing and it doesn't relate to the big picture. So it's like, okay, this is just noise.
Mhm.
And tune in as much as possible to
Mhm.
the things you like to eat, you know again, variety. Like, how are you going to incorporate all different foods from, yes, all different food groups, and notice how they feel for you. And then I would say one big thing that dancers tend to they a lot of dancers still shy away from is actually getting support in this area. you know it's like so many times I hear from a dancer, I've been struggling with this for years, but I've been just telling myself, like, this is about your self-discipline, or you should be able to figure this out on your own, or why
Or
this
I
shouldn't
don't
be
have
so
it.
hard.
Yeah, I don't have an eating disorder. I don't need somebody to
Right.
help me about food. I don't have that. But it doesn't need to be
Exactly.
that, right?
Right. It doesn't need to be that at all. It is, like I said, even from the practical standpoint, it's like you have so much going on. Sometimes it's just helpful to have, and I only meet with dancers 30 minutes a week because I know what the schedules are like, right? So, like,
Yeah.
carve out 30 minutes where you can talk about strategies to get in more variety and to eat more consistently and to have it be a much easier process and to even experiment with your own food choices and start to notice for yourself what feels good to eat before class, what feels good to eat before performances. Because, like, people can tell you, like, try eating these things.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that you're going to eat those things and be like, oh yeah, that was the perfect thing for me to eat.
Right.
You know, and it also can change from week to week and month to month and year to year. And so like
Right.
learning to be adaptable.
And if you eat something that's not on that list, it's like, okay, you're not,
Oh yeah.
going to the food purgatory. Like, it's
Right,
okay.
Right.
We can bounce back from that. So,
Yeah.
but we start to feel so bad. So if you're just joining, I am Bree Zabrowski, co-founder and CEO of Apollo Performance Wear, here with my fabulous friend and co-host Melissa McDaniel Grisham, and we're talking with Jess Spinner today about identifying sustainable, balanced, and supportive food relationship tools for performance athletes. This is Beyond the Steps. We talk about all the things on this show, and we answer one question. That's our question today. So Jess, we talked about food. Now I want to move on to the body, and then we'll combine them together, right? So it's body confidence and awareness is tricky because we have, it's our perception of our bodies and the confidence we have in our own body is heavily fueled by outside resources like the people around us, social media, pop culture in general, right? Food can sometimes feel like a solution to that rather than something that goes hand in hand. So when it comes to body confidence, what are some of the ways you encourage performance athletes to strengthen that confidence in their own body? Give us your top 2 or 3.
Yeah. So, you know, a lot of people have heard about gratitude lists.
Yeah.
And I love a gratitude list for body image specific to your body. So a lot of times it's helpful to do it in the morning where you can write out just a few things that you're grateful to your body for. And, you know, in the beginning, if it's not like, if you can't get so deep with that, or it seems so hard because you've been hating on your body for so long, then it might just be like, I'm grateful to my body for carrying me through the day, or I'm grateful to my body for allowing me to dance. And it's like putting that attention on yourself can have, again, consistency is key. If you do this kind of thing every morning, it is going to start to shift. Like things are going to start to shift for you. And then another one that goes, it's similar, but arguably different, you know, is to look for ways to develop deeper self-compassion and self-care and self-love. And, you know, like the self-compassion does come from partly how you speak to yourself. And first step in that is just developing the awareness. Like, what are the things you're saying to yourself when you get dressed in the morning or when you're looking in the mirror during a dance class? And, you know, what is a more loving way to approach that? Or what is like a quick shift in the moment you might do in your thinking to adjust that, you know, thought process. Self-love, I think, is built in a lot of ways through self-care. So like as simple as spending some time on your skincare, spending some time lovingly creating meals for yourself. You know, a lot of times, like
Instead
if
of
we're making,
rush, right? Okay.
yeah, we're like rushing through it. And like sometimes if you're like, for me, right, like as a mother, it's easier sometimes to be like lovingly in the preparation of food for your children than perhaps for yourself. Like you just like throw it together for yourself, right? So it's like, how can you do those things with more just like care for your own well-being? And this is interesting too, because relatively recently, they did a study on level of self-compassion and how it relates to food relationship. And, you know, like most nutrition studies, it's quite limited, but they surveyed, so it was a self-reported study, right? So they surveyed 100 mothers, I think they were newer mothers, and they asked, you know, about how they think about their own bodies and how they think about themselves and like what their self-talk is like. And then they asked them about their food choices and like what their sort of like daily food picture looks like. And they found that the ones who had higher levels of self-compassion also tended to make, you know, more nutrient dense or thoughtful or consistent eating choices as well.
Yeah.
You know, so like it makes sense. These things are so closely intertwined.
Yeah. 100%.
Interesting. It's very
Those are
honest.
easy things to overcome this though. Like I feel like those are really easy steps. It sounds like awareness is huge, a huge part
It
of
is
this.
huge.
And just going into it your day as you go, more aware of your thought processes seems to be key.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I've
Yeah.
done exercise like that before where, write down every time or think about every time you make a negative comment to yourself. And I've done it and I've been like, dang, you're really mean to yourself. Like, are
Mhm.
you why are you so mean? If your friend was that mean to you, they wouldn't be your friend anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I totally
For
get that.
young people too, like that can be a big question to say to them, like, would you talk to your friends that way? Like, I hope not, right?
Right.
Like, so you can't talk to yourself like that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So we talked about like how we're talking to ourselves, how we're relating to ourselves, self-compassion, self-care, self-love. But what can coaches, family members, friends, just like we were talking about, what do they need to remember to best support performance athletes in building body confidence?
I think that there's a lot that can be said. This is a self-awareness thing again, honestly, right? Like there's a lot of things that can be said without realizing what the impact might be. And, like I just started teaching dance in September. It's like pretty much the first time I'm teaching group dance classes like in my life. So it's kind of interesting, but like gives me like all this fresh perspective on a lot of these things. But the other day I was at the studio and a mother, I think she was picking up like her own daughter and then one of the other kids too. And our office manager said to not her daughter, the other one, she said, "Oh, is that one of those water bottles that like the fruit flavor goes into it?" I've not seen it before, but it's something where like I think you can put like a flavor packet in the top and like press it in like as much as you want.
Mhm.
And she was like, "Yeah, like it's so good. I like this flavor and that flavor." And this other girl's mom says it's like pure sugar.
Mhm.
Ah,
And
gotta love that.
I was like,
Ah,
why? Like, why? Like, and these dancers were 11 years old. The one who she said it to, like, it's very possible that this dancer needs as much energy as she can get into her body, like, even if it is sometimes pure sugar,
Mhm.
and like, but I'm sure maybe that's just how this mother has conditioned herself or talks about her own food stuff and then talks about her daughter's food stuff. And so like she
and
didn't even think about it.
that's the issue, right? Is like you could spend, especially with children, like I'm thinking about my kids, right? Like you can spend all this time working with your kids to instill this certain belief pattern or these habits. And then in 1 second, I mean, we always say dance, it takes a village and
Yeah.
they're sometimes at the studio or their activity. This is any athlete really. They're at their activity more than they're at home. And as they get older, it's a certain point where that balance shifts. You're not their primary person they're seeing anymore. They're spending more time with the coach. So how do you undo that mess? Right? Like it's just like it's a vicious cycle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It totally is.
Yeah.
You don't, sometimes you don't even know. Like, I'm sure that child's mom has no idea that that mom said something like that. You don't even
Right.
Right.
know. You don't
Right.
know what has happened. So I think that opening the lines of communication are important for parents and other adults with children to talk to them about, okay, what is your relationship to food? Not necessarily that big mature term, but talking about
Yeah.
those relationships and opening the lines of communication so you can gauge where they are so that you know where you need to stand. I think is
Right.
going to be super important.
Yeah. And it's like, what could be, if you consider like, well, if this child now goes home and is like, "Oh, mom, I don't want to use this water bottle anymore." Or like if she says something like, "Oh, this is just pure sugar, maybe I shouldn't be having it." Then as the parent, then she might have the opportunity as the parent to be like, where did this come
Mhm.
from? Like,
Mhm.
what's I know you like this so much and like I know that you need the energy that you might be getting from that flavor
Mhm.
in your water. Like, what's going on with that? But we
Mhm.
don't always get those opportunities. Like sometimes it is just internalized. So it's
Mhm.
hard because like there's so much influence.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. If you are just now joining us, this is Beyond the Steps. I am Melissa McDaniel Grisham with Turning Point Dance Creations. This is Bree Zabrowski with Apollo Performance, and we are talking to Jess Spinner about how we can help our performance athletes build body confidence and better food relationships. Please share this episode. Make sure that you let everyone know that we're here, because this information is so very important to help us keep this space safe for our performance athletes. So we've talked about a balanced approach to food and body confidence. And balance is such a interesting term, because you're like, okay, what does that mean? What does being balanced or a balanced approach to food really look like? Because you don't want to say things are bad and things are good. So you don't want to say I want as many bad foods as I have good foods.
Right.
That kind of defeats the purpose, right? So what does that mean when you say balanced?
I think that's what's so important about that, is that it is completely individual, and what is balanced from an actual, food need perspective, and also, emotional perspective, is different for each of us, and also will fluctuate and need adjustment at varying points in life. So I do think it's helpful to start just asking yourself, like, what is a balanced approach to life for me? And, even with what you were saying earlier, Melissa, about teaching hours, and I hear about this from teachers a lot, just like, and then now actually, I don't teach for that many hours in a row. I teach 3.5 hours, but in the beginning I would go and I would be like, oh my gosh, I'm starving by the end of this. Like, I have to change something about what I'm doing in preparation or during or afterwards. And so, like for me, it's like I have to eat a snack at like 3:30, and then I start teaching at 4. And sometimes I have my snack with me so I can eat it real quick in like the 1 minute when the new class is coming in, right? But you have to like see the different scenarios of your life and the different circumstances, and ask yourself, okay, like, what is a way for me to achieve balance within this frame, and how might that change?
For me,
and
like,
then
I remember, sorry, I don't want to cut you off,
Yeah.
but I want to say this. Like, I remember one point, it was like, you adjust, you have those snacks, but it's also okay to come home if you need to eat a meal when you come home because you're just hungry. Like, that's okay. If somebody said that to me once, and I would feel so, like you said, Melissa, like a failure, because I would come home and like just be starving and like gorge myself after not eating all day. And, yes, you make those adjustments and have a snack, but you still feel guilty after eating after a certain time at night, right? But then somebody said, if you're hungry, eat. Like, your body needs to eat. So eat and don't feel bad about it. And that really changed my perspective when I was teaching, because it was almost like you feel guilty because you hear all the information that says don't eat past 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock. And for some people, that's just not feasible.
Right. Yeah,
Right.
for a lot of dancers, right? Because so many of them, like if they're in high school and training after school, it's like, yeah, they're going to be dancing until 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night.
Absolutely.
They have to eat something when they get home.
Yes.
Like, you can't, and they've been going hours without a break, right? Like, it's time for a meal. Yeah, but that messaging around the right time to eat, it's like, that comes into looking at balance, is looking at your whole day, right? Like, considering your day as a whole, because sometimes individual meals we're not able to, get in protein, carbs, and fat, or like it doesn't feel quite as balanced as we would like it to. So then the next meal is an opportunity to like balance out your day. And then I also say, like, there are some days that it's hard to feel balanced with food because maybe you're traveling or you do have extra rehearsals. So you're not able to get in all the things that you want, or you needed something quick and it ended up being cupcakes were available. So you had one of those, right? Like, and that's okay. And so then it's like days and weeks, like you're allowed to look for balance within over the course of time as well. Not every single meal or every single day has to feel perfectly balanced.
Right. That's a great point. Yeah, you can look at your whole day. You're not a failure at breakfast. You still got lunch and you still have you still have snacks to balance it out. So I love that concept. We're talking about sustainable, supportive, and balanced. Those are 3 words that we're using today when we talk about tools. So the relationship tools of food: sustainable, supportive, and balanced. Why are those three words together so important?
Yeah. So sustainable is because, this kind of can help dancers stay out of extremes.
Mm,
Because if they're like, oh, I have to eat this certain way leading up to this audition, or I should eat this certain way leading up to this competition or performance.
mhm.
As a performing athlete, you never want to get into that kind of thinking where it's like, going to be kind of restrictive, but just for this much
Mm,
time, or like just until this deadline, which is like very common dancer thinking. I would
mhm.
always be like, oh, I have this audition coming up, I should make sure I look a certain way by that time.
Yeah, I'm not
um,
eating, and then dancers would like come out from the audition or the show and go, "Oh gosh, I just want a cheeseburger and fries
Right.
because I
Yeah,
haven't
I used to
eaten in
do it all
forever."
the time.
You
right.
know?
All the time.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's we then underplay the impact that that has on our energy and ability to
Yeah.
avoid injury leading up to those events, right? So you want your food plan to be something that is always maintainable, regardless of what's going on. Even if it does have to fluctuate and like feel more or less balanced from day to day, depending on what you have going on.
Mhm.
Supportive because your food should not be only supporting your physical well-being and performance, but also your mental well-being and performance. And I think that's tended in the past to be a missing piece.
Mhm.
Much more often we were like, oh, performance nutrition, it's just about performing at your peak level, and these are the foods you should eat, and this is what your meal plan should look like, and this and that. But that acts as if we are, computers or robots, and like, yeah, just like eat all these foods and don't think about, where's the joy and community and tradition in like some of the foods that I love, and that
Mhm.
have positive memories and feelings for me.
Mm.
And without that, dancers do, I think, can feel like less human, and like lose um, ability to develop even artistically. Like it's a big thing.
Mm.
It can have a really big impact if it's just like robotic food choices, only eating clean foods, and that kind of thing. And
Yeah,
then,
that's interesting.
yeah,
Can I say something real quick,
yeah,
Jess, about that emotional eating? People put a stamp of, oh, you shouldn't be an emotional eater. Don't be an emotional
right.
eater. Is that a good way of thinking, a good perspective, or what do you think about that?
So I went through an emotional eating psychology training. And so
Hmm.
it's like one of my favorite topics. It's so interesting to me. And I used to categorize myself as an emotional eater.
Hmm.
And certainly it was always like, it was a big stress coping mechanism for me, especially during my dancing years, which like obviously just fed into my guilt and shame around food, right? But what I learned, and like what that was so eye-opening for me, I was like, wow, this makes so much sense, is that emotional eating is a perfectly valid coping mechanism.
Hmm.
We only run into trouble with it when it's our primary coping mechanism or our only coping mechanism.
Got it.
Yeah,
Hmm.
and it's like, I now sometimes I choose to emotionally eat. I'm
Yep.
like, I'm feeling real stressed out. I could go for some ice cream. I think it might
This is
make me
happening
feel
right
better.
now. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, even just for now. And like, I'm gonna go and do that, and then not think about it again, because it's a
Hmm.
fine
Yeah.
choice, especially when it's a conscious choice.
Hmm.
Yeah. And then balanced, right? Like I said, balance is allowed to change. But when you prioritize variety in your food choices, that's going to help you achieve like the overall picture of balance. One
Hmm.
thing that I do with my daughter is, because like I said, she's only 3.5, and so I'm like very like, one of my biggest things is to try my hardest, at least from a perspective of what I do and the scenario at home, to like create a relationship to food that is no extremes, that is no moralizing, all of that. So when she, has had ice cream maybe twice already in the day, and I'm like, okay, like we gotta like
Gotta
pump the
lay off.
brakes. we got to pump the brakes on this. I'll just say, we have to eat something different now. It's really important to eat all different kinds of food. It's not like this is bad or too much sugar or whatever. It's just like, let's make sure we're giving your body all different things to get energy from. And I think that that's true for all of us, right? It's like, if you get stuck in a rut where you're like, oh, all I want to eat is this, try switching gears for a minute and say like, all right, what's something different I might eat, instead, and see if that kind of like moves me forward. And it usually will. So just like, have a different snack and say, okay, how can I incorporate more variety into this dish or meal and that kind of
Too
thing.
much of one thing is never good.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That lends itself to extremes.
Yeah. Got it. Okay. So walk us through your top 3 food relationship tools for performance athletes. Just list them out for us. What are they?
Yeah. So first, I would say consider your influences. And like you said, like there's so many like all around us, social media, on TV, magazines, whatever. Like consider those influences and ask yourself, is this supportive or not? And I would say also looking at, friends and parents and teachers. And even if they are well-meaning, if someone is like constantly drilling it into your brain that, oh, this is healthy food or this is what you should be eating, and that stresses you out or leads you to overwhelm or makes you want to be more extreme or restrictive with your food choices, then, you, depending on the relationship, you either can have a conversation with them and be like, hey, I know you're trying to help, but it stresses me out when you talk about food like that. Or you just say, okay, this is maybe if it's your teacher or someone you feel less comfortable confronting about it like that, you'll just be like, okay, I have to tune out those constant comments because it's like not helpful.
Not helpful.
Yeah. And then we've alluded to this one already, but removing the moral labeling, the good, the bad, the healthy, the unhealthy, the should, the shouldn't, should and shouldn't. That's an interesting one because we do that a lot with food. Oh, I shouldn't be eating this. I shouldn't be eating so much of this. And that thought process, again, it gets to extremes. It's like, I shouldn't be eating this, but this is my only chance. So I'm going to eat all of them, and give yourself permission. When I tell a dancer, okay, so if the candy is getting in the way, or like one of my clients from the very first call we had, she was like, she mentioned Cadbury eggs, like the Cadbury mini eggs. And I was like, like I feel like so many people have a thing for those Cadbury mini eggs. But she was like, when I get a bag of them, my mom always sends me a bag of them. Like I just eat the whole bag in one sitting. I was like, I totally relate. Yeah. And I said, but what are you thinking about the Cadbury mini eggs? Well, she says, I'm thinking I shouldn't be eating them. It's too much. Like there's too much sugar. This bag is so big. Like, so I'll just eat them all and get rid of them.
Get rid of them.
Okay. Right now they're gone. Now I don't have to stress about them anymore. But she feels all the guilt and all the things. So I was like, okay. So it was funny because, like I said, she said in the first session, and like the Cadbury mini eggs were like 6 weeks away.
Yeah.
But she was like, then we had been working together, and she says, oh, my mom gave me the Cadbury mini eggs. And I was like, how are they? And she was like, well, I didn't even open the bag yet because I was like, I can eat them anytime. That's what I told her to start saying to herself. I can have these anytime, like any, as long as they're available, right? Anytime. And she was like, I just have the bag. And, she's like, I just didn't want any yet, but I'm sure I will. And then I think I'll just be able to have like a small handful and that'll be it. I was like, yes, it's just like so much in our thoughts, so much in how we're like thinking about these things. And for some of us, right, like that's probably ingrained for her from the time she's in her early teens and now she's in her early 20s. So it's like for a decade, she's been thinking about this food that way.
Right.
Yeah. And then you do have to, and this is a similar concept, but you have to allow yourself to eat the foods that you enjoy and find ways to make the more nutrient dense foods as enjoyable as the more, indulgent perhaps foods, right? Like we don't want to get into thinking where it's like, oh, the food that's rich in nutrients doesn't taste good and I don't like it that much, but I should be eating it. So I'll stick some broccoli on my plate. But you want to make sure that you're looking for ways to enjoy all the foods so that you have variety easily. And that's something with teens that is sometimes hard because like a lot of times they have things they like and things they don't like, and their parents are like, they don't eat any vegetables, and I'm like, okay, like, how are we cooking them? Can we prepare them some different ways? Can we make some dips or sauces or something like that that makes it more fun or appealing? And a lot of times, you know, for teens, I get it, sometimes it is just having an outside influence saying to them, hey, why don't you try it like this? Because if their mom was like, hey, why don't you try it like this, they'd be like, no, mom, that's a bad idea. You know?
Yeah.
But that can help a lot, and allow yourself to find those ways to make all your food experiences enjoyable.
Awesome. It's helpful. That is helpful.
Yes, absolutely. If you are just now joining us, we are talking to Jess Spinner about our food relationships and how we can develop better food relationships and body confidence. And we are nearing the end of our episode, but you don't have to miss the whole thing. It is available on YouTube and Facebook at Apollo Performance and at TP Dance Creation. So go back, start from the beginning, and watch the entire episode there, as well as all the other episodes of Beyond the Steps. We are going to go to homework. Yes, is it homework time already?
It is homework time. We have to give the homework.
It's time
You
for
sort
homework.
of just did, but let's give one assignment though.
Okay, one assignment. So, Jess, we like to give homework. You've been with us before, so you probably know the drill. We give homework here at Beyond the Steps. We want you to give our viewers one small thing that they can do between now and next week when our next episode airs to make progress in this area.
Cool. I love it. So, you know, I think that a big theme in our conversation today was that awareness. So I would say we'll relate it to two things, and you can kind of choose, those who are watching can choose whether they want to relate it to body image or perhaps food relationship. But start to consider or start to be aware of the thoughts that are coming up for you, whether it's around your food choices or whether it is around your body, and just label them. I like this technique of thought labeling, and label these thoughts as helpful or unhelpful. And I think that with both food choices and body image or body thoughts, that can be very helpful. Supportive.
Do you like people to journal, like the people that you work with? Do you like them to journal their thoughts and on that?
Okay. Yeah, I'm big on journaling. We can process so much, and like we discover so much about ourselves through writing. And sometimes I'll send over like worksheets and things like that, and I'm like, if you can print it out or like write the questions in a journal, because like typing doesn't quite release the same, you know, thought process or pathways as writing does.
Yeah,
I have the worst consistency with journaling. I just am really, really bad about it, and I don't know why. I want to get better. We've talked so many times on this show with guests who are like, "Oh, you should journal. Oh, you should journal," and I'm like, "Yay!" And then I'm like,
I picked it back up this year, but I will say I'm finding it challenging to do it every day. I'm very like, I'll do it a few times a week. Like I'll sit down and journal, and sometimes it's in the morning and sometimes it's at night. It's also not a consistent time of day, which I'm trying to get to. Like my goal was always the morning, and I'm like, I am not having an easy time doing it in the morning. I don't know why. So nighttime it is for right now.
Yeah. But check in with yourselves about like what the expectation you have in your mind is. Because sometimes it's that we're like, I should be journaling, but I should be journaling like and writing 2 pages or for 15 minutes. And like maybe your journaling, your daily journaling is 3 sentences. Or like if you're doing the gratitude, it's like that's 2 or 3 sentences of like great things you're grateful for about, you know, your body or what have you. So
I've been trying to keep it super, just like whatever is on my mind, I'll write about it. But then I find like all of a sudden I end up writing like all this stuff comes out, right? When I don't do it for a couple of days. So, but it was really hard to get started at first. It is not easy because you really have to just be honest. You know?
Yeah, it was probably my problem. I'm like, ooh, I don't really want to talk about that. Okay.
Yeah, like I don't have the energy for all of this right now. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, Jess is giving you your homework. We also have homework. We give this homework weekly. Hopefully, some of you have done it. If you have, tell someone else to do it. If you haven't, get started. It's to Take the Steps initiative. It is a totally free course that you can take on a number of things that will help you become more educated and knowledgeable and create safer spaces for our performance athletes, no matter what area that they are in. So please, Bree is dropping that in the chat, and you can see that on the screen. So make sure that you take that. Jess, how can people, I know you were saying you do consults and you have clients. How can people get in touch with you?
So the easiest way is to just go to thewholedancer.com. THEWHOLE dancer.com. And, Instagram is a great place as well. It's also easy, just at The Whole Dancer.
Yeah, you have a ton of the resources on your Instagram and your website. I mean, you are like a wealth of knowledge when it comes to all things nutrition, wellness, and food. So I encourage everybody to check it out and make sure you give Jess a follow. How can people work with you?
You can send me an email. I do offer a free initial consult, and there's a tab right on my website to sign up for a free coaching call. And so that's a great way to just see if it's the right fit. If you're not, I always say this, if you're not the right fit for me, I do have tons of people who I can refer you out to if you're a better fit to work with one of my colleagues in the dance space. There are lots of really great coaches out there for dancers these days, which is amazing and awesome. So, a consult is just a great way to see if we're the right fit or if it might be with somebody else. And that's a nice way just to connect and share your story and experience and what your challenges are.
What is the email, Jess?
Jess@thewholedancer.com.
Awesome. We're going to put that in, but that's great. Okay. So Jess@thewholedancer.com. Thank you so much for being here and for joining us today for all the insight. It's a lot of great information that I think is really important to share all year round with the dance community, but I think more than season right now, and this is a good reminder for all of us to step back and have some awareness at what's coming out of our mouth and what we're really focused on and should be focused on, which is the health and wellness of ourselves and our dancers, or your performance athlete. If you're a coach of another activity out there, it all applies. Thank you to Jess Spinner for being here from The Whole Dancer. We encourage you to contact Jess to see if you're a good fit to consult with her. She has so many great resources on her website and her social media pages. So again, that is thewholedancer.com. Check her out. Paula Performance and Turning Point Dance Creations work really hard to bring this content to you every single week. We are working on turning this into an official podcast. It sort of already is. This lives on YouTube and Facebook at Apollo Performance and at TPDC. TP
Dance Creations.
Oh my gosh, TP Dance Creations.
We're getting there.
I'm getting there in 3 years. So follow both of those accounts and make sure that you watch all of our episodes on YouTube. They are fantastic. Every week we're releasing fantastic content from these guest experts like Jess. And we have a blog to go along with every episode as well. So make sure you check those out. Next week, 324, we are highlighting our second episode in our guest series with Aisha Upchurch. She is fantastic. She's been with us quite a while now, on and off, but we're talking about remixing the studio culture, how hip hop programs can enrich dance education. We're going to break that down with Aisha. In the meantime, please share this episode, like and subscribe. We appreciate all of your support. And there's also a link that you can sign up to get all of our episodes emailed. So you have your homework from Jess. You have your homework from us. You have a lot to accomplish. Make sure you do that. And until next week, we hope you continue your journey beyond the steps. Everybody have a wonderful weekend. Thanks for joining.